that is Bharat. In India, at a very early time, the spiritual and cultural unity was made complete and became the very stuff of the life of all our great surge of humanity between the Himalayas and the two seas. This is said by Sir Sri Aurobindo. So, in this chapter, we will be dealing with two primary questions, that is, how do we define India and what were the ancient names for India? This is the map of India. This is the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, and here is the Himalayas. And we have various other rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, and many more. This is the physical map which shows all the physical features of India. India, we know, is a modern nation with the defined borders, states, and a known population. However, it was very much not the same 500 years ago, or 2000 years ago, or even 5000 years ago. So, this region of the world, which we often call the Indian subcontinent, has had many various names and shifting boundaries. So, what we know India today is not the very same in the previous time. It had different boundaries and there are different names. Now we call it as India, but in the past there were various different names with which this was called. So we can learn about India's past and evolution from various sources. So there may be different sources from which we can finally understand a particular output. So in this course of history, India has been called by many names, both by its inhabitants, that is the people who live in that particular area are called the inhabitants of that particular area, and by the visitors from outside. So we who live in this area call it, and even the visitors gave various names for this place. So these names came to us from ancient scripts, accounts of travelers and pilgrims, and inscriptions. So first starting with the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is India's most ancient Veda, and as we'll see more about it in chapter 7. So it is several thousand years old, and it gives the northwest region of the subcontinent, that is the Sapta Sindhava, that is the land of 7 rivers. So the Rig Veda named India as the land of 7 rivers. So the word Sindhava comes from Sindhu, which refers to the Indus River, or at the times a river in general. So this word refers to river, and when they are saying it to be 7 rivers, so it is Sapta Sindhava. That is how Rig Veda has mentioned India. So moving on in time, we see names for other parts of India which appear in the literature. So the Mahabharata, one of India's most famous, that is in the theme our cultural heritage and knowledge traditions, interestingly it lists many regions. So in the Mahabharata there are many regions, that is the Kashmira, more or less what we call Kashmir today, Kurukshetra, which is parts of Haryana, Vanga, that is parts of Bengal, and the Prajoshita, which is roughly towards Assam, and Kerala, and many more which are named in the Mahabharata. So first we read about how Rig Veda had told, and next coming to the Mahabharata. Because ancient Indian scriptures are difficult to date, so it is not an easy question to answer. So the Mahabharata uses the term Bharatavarsha. So the Mahabharata uses the term Bharatavarsha and Jambudvipa, and scholars generally agree that this long poem was written some few centuries BCE onwards, that is before Common Era. So in Mahabharata it was told to be Bharatavarsha or Jambudvipa. This is how India was named. So the first term Bharatavarsha clearly extends to the entire subcontinent, and it includes the names of numerous rivers and people. So Bharatavarsha means the country of Bharatas. Bharata is the name that first appears in the Rig Veda, where it refers to one of the main Vedic groups of people. So, in later literature, several kings named Bharata are mentioned. So, here, when we call it to be Bharatavarsha, the word Bharata might also be the main Vedic group, or there are even various several kings named Bharata. And the second term, that is the Jambu Dvipa, means that it is the island of Jamun tree. So this is indeed a common tree native of India, which is also called the Jambul tree, Malabar plum tree. So that is how we named it to be the Jambu Dvipa. In fact, we get a good clue from an Indian emperor. His name is Ashoka, and we will meet him later. For now, we can take his date to be about 250 BC, that is before Common Era. And as we will see, he left us many inscriptions. So one of them, he used the same. So it is important to remember an Indian emperor whose name is Ashoka. So he has mentioned it to be Jambu Dvipa, that is whole of India, which at time included what we today call the Bangladesh, Pakistan, and also some well-known parts of Afghanistan as well. All together combinedly are called Jambu Dvipa. So few centuries later, Bharata became the name generally used for Indian subcontinent. For instance, in an ancient scripture which is called the Vishnu Purana. So here, the country that lies north of the ocean and south of the snowy mountains is called Bharata. So this means that this name remains in use even now, and in North India it is generally written as Bharat, while in the South India it is often as Bharatam. So it is interesting to note that different parts of the country adopted a similar notion for India. For instance, a poem of ancient Tamil literature, which is about 2000 years ago, praises a king whose name is known from Cape, that is Kumari, in the south, and from the great mountain in the north, and from the oceans on the east on the west. So you can now recognize the great mountain in the north, and it should not be a difficulty to identify the Cape Kumari. So it looks like an ancient Indians knew their geography very well. So in the Tamil literature, which is about 2000 years ago only, people started to mention about the mountains in the north and the Kumari in the south. So it can be easily understood to be the Kanyakumari, and also the oceans on the east and the west. So they clearly knew the boundaries of the country, that is Himalayas, Kanyakumari to the south, and east and west, which have their own seas. So the Indian constitution, which was first written in English, used the phrase India, that is Bharat, right at the beginning. So similarly, in the Hindi version of the constitution remains that the same, that is Bharat, Artha, India. So how? Now we'll understand how the foreigners named India. So until now we understood about how we, the inhabitants of India, think about it in the Rig Veda, from inscriptions of Rig Veda and Mahabharata. So now we'll understand how foreigners named India. So the first foreigners to mention India were the Persians and the ancient inhabitants of Iran. So in the 6th century BC, that is before Common Era, a Persian emperor launched a military campaign and gained control of the region of the Indus River. So a Persian emperor launched a military campaign and he had gained control over the region of the Indus River, which as we know is earlier called the Sindhu. So it is of no surprise that in their earliest records and stone inscriptions, the Persians referred to India as Hind, Hidu or Hindu. So in their inscriptions, these Persian rulers have named India to be as Hindu, Hind or Hidu. So which are the adaptations in their language of Sindhu. So here, in the ancient Persian, Hindu is the purely geographical term, So it will not refer to the Hindu religion. It is only about the language which is spoken in Sindhu. So based on these Persian sources, the ancient Greeks named the region Indoi or Indike, and they dropped the initial letter, that is H, of Hindu, because the letter did not exist in their Greek language. So later they dropped the word H because that was not there in their Greek language, and so they named it as Indica or Indoi. So first we can understand Sindhu, Hindu, and it became Indike because H will not exist in Greek language. So the ancient Chinese also interacted with India in similar references. They refer to India as Intu or Indu. So this word also originates from Sindhu in the similar manner. So this is the first page of the Constitution of India. So here we can see that India, that is Bharat. Next, another Chinese word also has been come up from Sindhu, which was spelled as so, but this word could also only be understood as heavenly master. So this reflects the respect the ancient Chinese had for India as the land of Buddha. You probably quite familiar with the most recent term, that is Hindustan, but you may not know that it was first used in the Persian inscriptions that some 1800 years ago. So later on, this became the term used by the most invaders of India. So first this term was coined in the Persian inscriptions, but it was later used even by most of the invaders who came to India, that is Hindustan. So in this chapter, we have covered these following things, that is India is an ancient land which has many names in the course of history, and the names given by the ancient inhabitants of India include the Jambudvipa, the Bharata, and this later became widespread in time and in the name of India in most Indian languages. So the foreign visitors too or invaders of India mostly adopted the names from Sindhu or the Indus River, and this results in Hindu, Indoi, and eventually India. In between, even the invaders started using the term Hindustan.